These
What would you
documents
do if the
prove
most
fraud.
powerful woman
the
in New
charity
York
vault funds have
tried
been
to destroy your
stolen.
life?
How
She
dare
took your
you
job.
accuse me?
She
This
turned
is
your
slander.
co-workers against you. She called your mother and told your 7-year-old daughter that mommy was a criminal. And then she smiled and asked you to sign away custody of your child forever. This
Sign
is the
these
true
papers,
story of a
Rachel.
woman who had
You have
nothing
no
left.
choice.
No money,
I will never let
no
you take him
allies,
away from me, Derek.
no hope. Everyone told her to give up. Everyone said she could not win against a billionaire's fiancé with unlimited resources and zero mercy.
Miss Chase,
But
you are
she did
under
not
arrest.
listen. Because sometimes
can't
the most
believe she did
dangerous
this.
person in the room
Look
is
at
not
Mr.
the one with
Morrison.
the most money. It is the one with nothing left to lose.
We did it,
If you have
sweetie.
ever felt invisible,
It's finally
if you have
ours.
ever been told to stay quiet, if you have ever wondered whether fighting back is even possible, this story is for you. Stay until the end, because the moment she finally destroys the woman who tried to break her will give you chills. And if this story touches your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Share it with someone who needs to hear that ordinary women can defeat extraordinary enemies. Now let us begin. The grand ballroom of the Weston Hamptons estate held its breath. 400 guests stood frozen in designer gowns and tailored suits, champagne flutes suspended midair, conversations dying on painted lips. The orchestra had stopped playing 3 seconds ago, their bows hovering over strings as if time itself had shattered into pieces. At the center of the marble floor, beneath crystal chandeliers worth more than most people's homes, a woman in a maid's uniform stood at the microphone. She was not supposed to be there. Rachel Morrison gripped the microphone stand with steady hands, though her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. Behind her, Miranda Chase was screaming something, her perfect face twisted into something ugly and unrecognizable. Security guards pushed through the crowd, but they moved slowly as if uncertain whose orders to follow. Harrison Weston III stood frozen near the champagne tower, his face pale, his eyes locked on Rachel with an expression she could not quite read. Rachel leaned into the microphone. Her voice came out calm, steady, clear. I have evidence that Miranda Chase has stolen $4.2 million from dying children. The room exploded into whispers. But before the chaos could fully erupt, before security could reach her, before Miranda could claw her way to the stage, everything froze. 72 hours earlier. The story began on a Tuesday morning in late August when Rachel Morrison stepped out of a yellow taxi in front of a Manhattan penthouse she had only seen in magazines. She carried one suitcase, one purse, and one secret she planned to take to her grave. The doorman looked at her wrinkled blouse and scuffed shoes with barely concealed judgment. "Service entrance is around back," he said without looking up from his phone. Rachel nodded. She had expected this. She had prepared for this. 2 years ago, she would have walked through the front door of a building like this as a guest, as an equal, as someone who belonged in rooms with crystal chandeliers and champagne towers. But that was before Derek, before the divorce, before she lost everything. Now she was 34 years old, starting over from nothing, taking a job as a maid in a billionaire's household because the pay was good and it included housing. Every dollar she earned went into a savings account with one purpose: $15,000 for a forensic accountant who could find the assets Derek had hidden during their divorce, $15,000 to prove he had lied, $15,000 to fight for her daughter. Rachel walked around to the service entrance and pressed the buzzer. A woman's voice crackled through the speaker. Name and position. Rachel Morrison. New housekeeping staff. The door clicked open. Inside, a woman in her late 50s waited in the service hallway. She had kind eyes and tired shoulders, the posture of someone who had spent decades carrying other people's burdens. "I am Gloria Jenkins," the woman said, "head housekeeper. I will be training you this week." "Thank you." Rachel extended her hand. "I appreciate the opportunity." Gloria shook it firmly, then leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Listen to me carefully, new girl. Keep your head down. Miss Chase does not like eye contact. Do not speak unless spoken to. And whatever you do, never be alone with her." Rachel blinked. "Miss Chase, the fiancée." Gloria's expression darkened. "She runs this household, not Mr. Weston, her." Rachel nodded slowly. "I understand." Gloria studied her for a long moment, as if seeing something beneath Rachel's careful mask. Then she sighed. "No, you do not understand yet, but you will." Gloria led Rachel through the service quarters, past industrial kitchens and laundry rooms, up a narrow staircase to the staff quarters on the basement level. Rachel's room was small, a single bed, a tiny closet, a window that looked out onto a concrete wall, but it was clean, and it was hers, and it was a place to rebuild. Uniforms are in the closet, Gloria said. Black dress, white apron, hair pulled back, no jewelry, no perfume. You start in 1 hour. Rachel unpacked her single suitcase while Gloria watched from the doorway. Where are you from? Gloria asked. Ohio, Rachel said. Small town outside Columbus. Family? Rachel's hands paused on a folded shirt. A daughter, Lily. She is 7. She lives with my mother while I work. Gloria's expression softened. That is hard, being away from your child. Rachel swallowed the lump in her throat. It is temporary. I am saving money for something important. Once I have enough, I will go back for her. Gloria nodded slowly. We all have our reasons for being here. Just remember what I told you. Keep your head down. Stay invisible. That is how you survive in this house. She left Rachel alone with her thoughts and her secrets. That evening, Rachel got her first glimpse of Miranda Chase. The penthouse was hosting a small dinner party. 12 guests, politicians and celebrities, and people whose faces Rachel recognized from magazine covers. Rachel's job was simple. Stay in the background. Refill water glasses. Clear empty plates. Remain invisible. Miranda Chase entered the dining room like a queen descending upon her subjects. She was stunning in a way that seemed almost unreal. Perfect blonde hair, perfect bone structure, a smile that could light up a room or freeze it solid. She moved through the guests with practiced grace, touching arms, laughing at jokes, making everyone feel special and seen. Rachel watched from the shadows, fascinated despite herself. Then a waiter made a mistake. His name was Thomas, and he had worked for the Weston household for 3 years. He was carrying a bottle of wine when someone bumped his elbow. A single drop splashed onto the white tablecloth near Miranda's place setting. Not on her dress, not even on her plate. Just a tiny red dot on white linen. Miranda's smile did not flicker. She simply turned to her assistant, a nervous woman named Karen Mills, and whispered something in her ear. Karen nodded and made a note on her phone. The dinner continued without incident. The next morning, Thomas was gone. Gloria found Rachel in the laundry room, folding towels with mechanical precision. Did you hear? Gloria asked quietly. About Thomas? Rachel kept her voice neutral. What happened? Miss Chase had him terminated. Gloria's jaw was tight. He had 3 children, a mortgage, 19 years until retirement. She made one phone call, and now he will never work in this industry again. Rachel's hands stilled on the towel. For spilling wine? For spilling a drop of wine near her. Gloria shook her head. That is who she is, Rachel. That is who you are dealing with. She destroys people for the smallest mistakes, and she enjoys it. Rachel said nothing. But inside, something cold settled in her stomach. She had known cruel people before. She had been married to one. But this was different. This was cruelty wrapped in silk and diamonds, cruelty that smiled for cameras and donated to charities and fooled everyone who did not look closely enough. That night, Rachel started a notebook. She wrote down everything. Times, dates, names, what she saw, what she heard, details that might seem meaningless but could become evidence if she ever needed it. Gloria's words echoed in her mind. The rich fight with lawyers, and lawyers need paper trails. Rachel did not know what she was preparing for, but she knew with bone-deep certainty that a storm was coming, and when it arrived, she intended to survive it. 3 days into her new position, Rachel learned something important about surviving the Weston household. Miranda Chase had 2 faces. The first face appeared whenever Harrison Weston was present. This Miranda was warm, gracious, and endlessly charming. She called the staff by name. She asked about their families. She remembered birthdays and sent flowers when someone's grandmother passed away. The second face emerged the moment Harrison left the room. This Miranda had eyes like chips of ice and a voice that could make grown men flinch. She criticized everything. The angle of the napkins, the temperature of her tea, the way someone had arranged flowers in a vase. Nothing was ever good enough, and everyone paid for it. Rachel watched both faces carefully. She was excellent at her job, and she knew it. Years of coordinating luxury hotel events had taught her how to anticipate needs, solve problems, and remain invisible while doing both. She cleaned rooms with military precision. She arranged flowers with an artist's eye. She noticed details that other staff members missed. Gloria noticed too. "You are different from the others," Gloria said one afternoon, watching Rachel organize a linen closet with ruthless efficiency. "You have done this work before." Rachel kept her expression neutral. "I learned quickly." Gloria studied her with knowing eyes. "No, you already knew. The question is why someone like you is folding towels in a billionaire's basement." Rachel said nothing. Gloria waited, then sighed. "Fine. Keep your secrets. But be careful, Rachel. Miss Chase collects secrets. She uses them like weapons." That evening, something unexpected happened. Rachel was working late, reorganizing the penthouse library while the household slept. It was her favorite task. The library was beautiful. 3 walls of leather-bound books and 1 wall of windows overlooking Central Park. In another life, she would have spent hours here, reading and dreaming. She was alphabetizing the philosophy section when she heard footsteps. Rachel froze, expecting Miranda or Karen. Instead, Harrison Weston stepped into the library. He wore a vintage bathrobe that looked like it belonged in a museum, paired with silk pajama pants and slippers. His hair was disheveled from sleep. He looked utterly undignified. He also looked surprised to find someone else in his library at 2 in the morning. "Oh," he said. "Hello," Rachel curtsied slightly. "Good evening, sir. I apologize for the intrusion. I was just finishing the reorganization. I can leave if you prefer privacy." Harrison waved his hand. "No, no, stay. I just came down because I could not sleep." He gestured vaguely at the books. "Sometimes reading helps." Rachel nodded and returned to her work, keeping her movements quiet and unobtrusive. But Harrison did not select a book. Instead, he sank into one of the leather armchairs and stared at the ceiling. Several minutes passed in silence. Then he spoke. "Nice robe," Rachel said before she could stop herself. Harrison looked down at the bathrobe as if seeing it for the first time. "It was my grandmother's." Rachel's lips twitched. "That raises more questions." A surprised laugh escaped Harrison's throat. It was a genuine sound, warm and unguarded. "I suppose it does. She was quite a woman, my grandmother. Left me this robe and $3 billion. I treasure the robe more." Rachel smiled despite herself. "She sounds like someone worth remembering." She was. Harrison's expression grew wistful. "She always told me that the measure of a person is not what they own, but how they treat people who can do nothing for them." "That is good advice." Harrison looked at Rachel properly for the first time. His eyes were surprisingly kind. "It is. I try to remember it, though lately I feel like I have forgotten many things my grandmother taught me." Rachel said nothing. It was not her place to comment on her employer's personal struggles. But Harrison seemed to want to talk. "Miranda takes care of everything, you know," he said quietly. "The household, the social calendar, the charitable foundation. She handles it all so I can focus on business. Sometimes I wonder if I have become invisible in my own life." The words hung in the air between them. Rachel considered remaining silent. It would be the safe choice, the invisible choice. But something in Harrison's voice reminded her of herself 2 years ago, trapped in a marriage to a man who controlled everything while she slowly disappeared. "Do you feel like yourself when you are with her?" Rachel asked softly. Harrison's eyes widened. He did not answer, but his face said everything. The next morning, Rachel had her first real encounter with Megan Crawford. Megan was another staff member, responsible for managing Miranda's personal schedule. She was 29, blonde, and friendly in a way that felt almost aggressive. "You are the new girl, right?" Megan appeared at Rachel's elbow while she was arranging breakfast settings. "Let me show you how things really work around here." Rachel allowed herself to be led to the staff break room, where Megan poured 2 cups of coffee and launched into a detailed explanation of the household hierarchy. "The key is staying on Miss Chase's good side," Megan said. "She seems scary, but once she trusts you, she is actually very generous." Rachel nodded, playing along. "How do you get her to trust you?" Megan smiled. "You have to prove your loyalty. Show her that you are useful, that you see things and tell her about them." Something cold slithered down Rachel's spine. "What kind of things?" "Oh, you know." Megan's voice was casual. Who is talking to whom? What people say when they think no one is listening. Miss Chase likes to stay informed. Rachel understood immediately. Megan was a spy planted to watch the staff and report back to Miranda. That is very helpful, Rachel said, keeping her voice light. Thank you for the advice. Megan beamed. Of course, we girls have to stick together, right? Right, Rachel echoed. So that night, she wrote Megan's name in her notebook and circled it twice. Later that week, Rachel witnessed something that confirmed everything Gloria had warned her about. A delivery woman named Dorothy Hayes arrived with flowers for an upcoming dinner party. Dorothy was in her early 60s, with gray hair and calloused hands that spoke of decades of hard work. She ran a small flower shop that had contracted with the Weston household for years. Dorothy entered through the wrong door. It was an honest mistake. The delivery entrance was being repainted, and the temporary signs were confusing. Dorothy ended up in the main foyer just as Miranda was descending the grand staircase to greet lunch guests. Miranda's smile vanished like a light switching off. What is this? Miranda's voice could have frozen fire. Why is there a delivery person in my foyer? Dorothy's face went pale. I am so sorry, ma'am. The signs were confusing and Miranda cut her off. I do not want excuses. I want competence. Is that too much to ask from the help? Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. I have been delivering flowers here for 15 years. And clearly you have learned nothing in that time. Miranda's lip curled with disgust. Karen, make a note. We are finding a new florist, one who understands basic professionalism. Dorothy's face crumpled. Please, ma'am, my business depends on this contract. I have 3 employees who will lose their jobs. Then perhaps you should have thought about that before embarrassing me in front of my guests. Miranda turned and walked away without another word. Dorothy stood alone in the foyer, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Rachel had watched the entire exchange from the doorway. Her hands shook with suppressed rage. Every instinct screamed at her to speak up, to defend this kind woman who had made a simple mistake. But she thought of Lily, of the child support payments, of the $15,000 she needed to save. She could not afford to get fired, so she stayed silent and hated herself for it. Later, Rachel found Dorothy crying in the service elevator. She sat down beside her without speaking and pulled a tissue from her apron pocket. Dorothy accepted it with trembling hands. They sat together in silence for a long moment. Finally, Rachel reached into her personal bag and retrieved a protein bar. It was from her own limited stash, carefully rationed to stretch between paychecks. She pressed it into Dorothy's palm. Dorothy looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. You are kind. Thank you. Rachel squeezed her hand gently. I am sorry I could not do more. Dorothy shook her head slowly. Be careful here. The pretty one destroys kind people. Rachel helped Dorothy to her feet and walked her to the service entrance. That night, she added another entry to her notebook. The storm she had sensed was closer now, and Rachel was beginning to understand exactly what she was dealing with. On Rachel's 4th day at the Weston estate, the real war began. It started, as these things often do, with something small, something trivial, something that should not have mattered at all but became the spark that ignited everything. Miranda Chase could not find her diamond bracelet. The bracelet was worth $85,000, a gift from Harrison purchased at a charity auction to support children's hospitals. Miranda wore it to every major event, always making sure photographers captured it glinting on her delicate wrist. And now it was gone. Rachel was polishing silver in the kitchen when she heard the screaming begin. Where is it? Miranda's voice echoed through the penthouse like a siren. Someone took it. Someone in this household is a thief. Staff members scattered like startled birds. Rachel watched them flee past the kitchen door, their faces white with fear. Gloria appeared at Rachel's elbow. Stay here, she whispered urgently. Do not move, do not speak, pretend you do not exist. But before Rachel could respond, Karen Mills appeared in the doorway. You. Karen pointed at Rachel. Miss Chase wants all new staff in the main gallery. Now. Rachel set down her polishing cloth and followed Karen upstairs. The main gallery was a long room lined with modern art that Rachel suspected cost more than most houses. Miranda stood in the center, her face twisted with fury. Two security guards flanked her along with Karen and Megan. And there was Harrison standing near the window, his expression troubled. Search them, Miranda commanded. All of them. Check their rooms, their bags, everything. The security guards moved toward the small cluster of staff members. Rachel counted four others besides herself, all new hires from the past month. The searches began. Rachel watched as security tore through the other employees' personal spaces. They found nothing suspicious. Old photographs, worn paperbacks, the small treasures of ordinary lives. Then they came to Rachel's room. She stood in the doorway as security guards rifled through her belongings. They checked her suitcase, her closet, her single drawer of personal items, and then one of them found her notebook. What is this? The guard held it up. Rachel's blood turned to ice. Miranda snatched the notebook from his hands and began flipping through pages. Her eyes narrowed as she read Rachel's careful entries. Times, dates, names, observations. What is this? Miranda repeated, her voice deadly quiet. Are you spying on us? Rachel kept her voice steady. It is a personal journal, ma'am. Nothing about this household, just my private thoughts. Miranda's smile was sharp as broken glass. Private thoughts that include names of my staff, dates of my events, descriptions of my home. I like to document my experiences. Rachel refused to look away. It helps me process new environments. Miranda stepped closer. Her perfume was cloying, too sweet. Or perhaps you are gathering information for someone. A journalist, a competitor, a lawyer. The accusation hung in the air. Rachel felt the eyes of every staff member upon her. She understood, with horrible clarity, that her next words would determine everything. I am not a spy, Rachel said quietly. I am a woman trying to rebuild her life after a difficult divorce. I took this job because it pays well and includes housing. I write in my journal because it helps me cope with being away from my daughter. That is the truth. Something flickered in Miranda's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or calculation. Then Miranda raised her hand. Rachel saw it coming, the open palm, the rage behind it. The assumption that a maid would simply accept violence from her employer. And something inside Rachel, something that had been dormant since her divorce, suddenly woke up. She caught Miranda's wrist, not aggressively, not violently, just firmly enough to stop the blow before it landed. The room went absolutely silent. Miranda's face contorted with shock and fury. How dare you touch me? Rachel released her wrist and stepped back. Her voice was calm, though her heart hammered against her ribs. I understand you are upset, ma'am, but hitting employees is assault. Even in New York. Miranda's eyes blazed. You are fired. Pack your things immediately. I am calling every agency in this city. You will never work in a private household again. I will make certain of it. Rachel's stomach dropped. Without this job, there was no money, no forensic accountant, no chance of fighting Derek. She would lose everything she had been building toward. Lily's face flashed through her mind. The sound of her daughter's laughter. The way Lily said mommy like it was the most important word in the world. Rachel opened her mouth to speak, though she did not know what she would say. But before she could form words, another voice cut through the tension. What is happening here? Harrison Weston stepped forward from his position near the window. His voice was quiet but carried an authority Rachel had not heard from him before. Miranda's expression shifted instantly. The rage melted into wounded confusion. Darling, she said, her voice trembling. This woman grabbed me. She was keeping notes about our household. I think she might be working for someone. Harrison looked at Rachel. His eyes searched her face, and she met his gaze without flinching. Then Gloria spoke. It was the bravest thing Rachel had ever witnessed. Sir, Gloria said, her voice steady despite the risk. Miss Chase was looking for her bracelet. She believed one of the new staff had taken it. But I found it just now. Gloria held up her hand. The $85,000 bracelet dangled from her fingers, catching the light. It was in Miss Chase's bathroom, Gloria continued. Behind the sink. It must have fallen while she was preparing for yesterday's dinner party. Miranda's face went pale. No, that is not. I looked there already. I found it just now, Gloria repeated firmly. There was no theft. Harrison looked at the bracelet, then at Miranda, then at Rachel. So there was no crime, he said slowly. No spy, no reason to fire anyone. Miranda sputtered, but she grabbed me. After you tried to hit her, Harrison said quietly, I saw it from where I was standing. The words landed like stones dropped into still water. Miranda's composure cracked for just a moment. Darling, I would never. She was threatening me. Harrison held up his hand. Rachel stays. This conversation is over. He turned and walked out of the gallery without another word. Miranda stood frozen, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Her eyes locked onto Rachel with an intensity that promised retribution. This is not finished, Miranda whispered. And then she followed Harrison out of the room. The other staff members dispersed quickly, eager to escape the tension. Only Gloria remained. She walked to Rachel and pressed the notebook back into her hands. You made an enemy today, Gloria said softly. A dangerous one. Rachel nodded. I know. She will come for you. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. And when she does, she will not hold back. Rachel looked down at her notebook, at the careful entries she had made, at the evidence she was only beginning to understand. Then I will be ready, Rachel said. Gloria studied her for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. Maybe you will survive this place after all. She walked away, leaving Rachel alone with her thoughts. Rachel stood in the empty gallery, surrounded by million-dollar paintings and the lingering echo of Miranda's threat. She had won this battle, but she knew with absolute certainty that the war was just beginning, and Miranda Chase was not the kind of woman who forgot. The next week passed in deceptive calm. On the surface, nothing changed. Rachel continued her duties. Miranda continued her charity work. Harrison continued his business meetings. The household moved forward as if the confrontation in the gallery had never happened. But beneath the surface, currents were shifting. Rachel noticed small things at first. Conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. Glances exchanged between Megan and Karen. The way Miranda smiled at her now, too sweetly, like a cat watching a mouse and waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. Gloria noticed too. She is planning something, Gloria told Rachel one evening as they folded linens in the basement. I have seen this before. The calm before she destroys someone. What do I do? Rachel asked. Gloria's expression was grim. Pray, document, and do not trust anyone. Rachel followed her advice. She continued writing in her notebook. She memorized exits and schedules. She made herself indispensable through sheer competence, hoping that her value would protect her when the storm finally broke. And she stayed alert for the trap she knew was coming. What she did not expect was who would spring it. On a Tuesday afternoon, the household began preparations to relocate to the Hamptons estate. A major engagement party was planned for the following weekend. 400 guests. Full press coverage. The social event of the season. Everyone was busy with logistics, which was how Rachel found herself alone in the service hallway when the door to the parking garage opened. A man walked in. He was handsome in a polished way, with expensive clothes and a smile that did not reach his eyes. He looked around the hallway with the casual arrogance of someone who believed he belonged everywhere. Then he saw Rachel. His smile widened. Well, well, he said, Rachel Morrison, how the mighty have fallen. Rachel's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. She had heard it speak wedding vows. She had heard it lie to lawyers and judges. She had heard it whisper threats in the darkness of their marital home. Derek, she breathed. Derek Morrison stepped closer, his expensive shoes clicking on the marble floor. I have to say, he continued, his voice dripping with amusement, when I heard Harrison's new maid was named Rachel Morrison, I assumed it was a coincidence, a common enough name. But then I saw the staff photo directory. He pulled out his phone and showed her a picture. Her own face stared back at her, captured in the employee database. Imagine my surprise, Derek said softly, when I realized my ex-wife was scrubbing floors in my business partner's home. Rachel's mind raced. Derek was Harrison's business partner. Of course he was. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. What are you doing here? She managed. Business meeting with Harrison. Derek pocketed his phone. I am staying at the estate for the engagement party. We are finalizing a $50 million investment deal. He tilted his head. Although now, I am wondering if I should mention to Harrison who his new maid really is. Rachel forced herself to breathe. What do you want, Derek? His smile sharpened. Straight to the point. I always liked that about you. Fine, I want you to drop the investigation. What investigation? Do not play stupid. Derek's voice hardened. I know you hired someone to look into my finances. I know you are trying to find the accounts I allegedly hid during our divorce. Because you did hide them, Rachel said quietly. You lied to the court. You lied about everything. Prove it. Derek spread his hands. Oh, wait, you cannot. Because you are broke. Because you are working as a maid. Because you are so desperate for money that you took a job where you fold the laundry of a man who could crush you without even noticing. Rachel said nothing. Derek leaned closer. His cologne was the same as it had always been, expensive and suffocating. Here is what is going to happen, he said. You are going to drop the investigation. You are going to sign new custody papers giving me full rights to Lily, and you are going to disappear. Rachel's heart stopped. No, no, Derek laughed. Rachel, you have no leverage here. I can walk upstairs right now and tell Harrison that his maid is actually a Cornell-educated event coordinator who has been lying to his entire household. I can get you fired. I can get you blacklisted. I can make sure you never see Lily again. She will not go with you, Rachel whispered. She knows what you are. She is 7. Derek's smile was cruel. Children are impressionable. Give me a year, and she will not even remember your name. Rachel wanted to scream. She wanted to attack him, to claw that smug expression off his face. But she had learned through years of painful experience that Derek fought dirty, that he always had backup plans, that losing her temper would only give him ammunition. So she stood frozen while he delivered his ultimatum. You have until the engagement party to decide, Derek said. Sign the papers, or I destroy you. He straightened his tie and walked past her toward the elevator. At the door, he paused. Oh, and Rachel? He glanced back over his shoulder. It was good seeing you again. You looked tired. Then he was gone. Rachel stood alone in the empty hallway, her world crumbling around her. That night, she sat on her narrow bed in the basement room and stared at the wall. Everything she had worked for was falling apart. The chamisa, the savings, the hope of ever getting justice against Derek. It was all slipping through her fingers like water. She thought about Lily, about her daughter's laugh, about the drawings Lily sent her every week, carefully folded and mailed from Ohio, about the way Lily said, I love you, Mommy, at the end of every phone call. She thought about giving up. It would be easier. Sign the papers, disappear, let Derek win, stop fighting against a system that had never been designed to protect people like her. But then she thought about what she would be teaching Lily if she surrendered. That bullies win, that money trumps justice, that women should stay quiet and accept whatever scraps powerful men deign to give them. Rachel closed her eyes. No, she whispered to the empty room. I will not give up. Not yet. She did not know how she would fight back. She did not know what weapon she had left. But she knew with bone-deep certainty that she was not ready to stop trying. Not while she still had breath in her lungs and love for her daughter in her heart. The Hamptons estate was even more magnificent than the Manhattan penthouse. 12 bedrooms, 3 pools, private beach access, gardens that stretched for acres, staff quarters that were actually comfortable, a rare luxury that Rachel noted with bitter appreciation. She had been assigned to help with engagement party preparations, which meant endless hours of arranging flowers, polishing silverware, and coordinating with caterers. It also meant crossing paths with Derek far more often than she would have liked. He watched her constantly. During meals, she could feel his eyes following her as she served drinks. During setup, he would appear in doorways, observing her with that knowing smile. He was enjoying this, savoring her helplessness like a fine wine. But Derek was not the only one watching. Miranda had noticed his interest in the new maid. They met in Miranda's private study on the 3rd evening. Rachel knew this because she was dusting the hallway outside and heard voices through the door that had not been fully closed. You know her, Miranda said. Rachel Morrison. We were married, Derek replied. Briefly, it ended badly, and now she is working in my household. Miranda's voice was sharp. That seems like quite a coincidence. I was surprised myself, Derek said smoothly. But it creates an interesting opportunity. Rachel pressed closer to the door, her heart pounding. I want her gone, Miranda continued. She embarrassed me in front of Harrison. She knows things about this household. She is dangerous, I agree completely. Derek's voice was thoughtful. She is also investigating me, trying to prove I hid assets during our divorce. Did you? Of course. But she cannot prove it unless she finds a forensic accountant willing to dig through offshore accounts. And those experts are expensive. Miranda laughed softly. So we have a common enemy. It appears we do. Derek paused. What are you proposing? Help me destroy her, Miranda said. Get her fired. Get her humiliated. Get her arrested if possible. And in exchange, I will make sure Harrison invests $50 million in your fund. Silence stretched between them. Then Derek spoke, his voice low and satisfied. You have yourself a deal, but I want more than fired. I want her destroyed. I want her to never recover. Miranda's response sent chills down Rachel's spine. Now you are speaking my language. Rachel backed away from the door on silent feet. Her hands were shaking. Her mind was racing. They were working together. Miranda and Derek, two people who had every reason to want her destroyed, combining forces against her. She needed help. She needed allies. She needed a plan. But who could she trust? Gloria found her that night in the garden, staring at the ocean. The older woman sat down beside her on a stone bench and said nothing for a long while. Finally, Rachel spoke. They are planning something. Both of them. Miranda and my ex-husband. Gloria nodded slowly. I suspected as much. Miss Chase has been smiling too much lately. That is never a good sign. What do I do? Gloria reached into her pocket and withdrew a small brass key. She pressed it into Rachel's palm. This opens Miss Chase's home office, Gloria said quietly. There are things in there, documents, records, things she would not want anyone to see. Rachel stared at the key. If I get caught, you will be arrested. Gloria's voice was matter of fact. Breaking and entering, theft of documents, felony charges. Then why are you giving me this? Gloria was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with old pain. 25 years ago, I was married to a wonderful man. We were happy. Then a woman like Miranda came into our lives. She wanted my husband for herself, and when he refused, she destroyed him. False accusations, ruined reputation. He lost his job, his friends, his will to live. Gloria's eyes glistened in the moonlight. I did nothing, she continued. I was afraid. I told myself that staying quiet was the safe choice, and I have regretted it every single day since. She looked at Rachel with fierce intensity. You fight, Rachel. You fight for both of us. Rachel closed her fingers around the key. Its edges bit into her palm like a promise. What if I fail? Then at least you will know you tried. Gloria stood slowly. That is more than I can say for myself. She walked back toward the staff quarters, leaving Rachel alone with the key and the weight of everything it represented. Rachel sat in the garden until dawn began to lighten the horizon. Then she made her decision. That night, while the household slept, Rachel crept through the darkened corridors of the Hamptons estate. Miranda's office was on the second floor, tucked away at the end of a private wing. Rachel had memorized the layout during her cleaning duties. She knew which floorboards creaked. She knew which security cameras covered which angles. She knew the patrol schedule of the night guard. At exactly 2:17 in the morning, she slipped the brass key into the lock and turned it. The door opened without a sound. Inside, Miranda's office was immaculate. White furniture, fresh flowers, a massive desk covered with neatly organized papers. Rachel did not turn on the lights. Instead, she used her phone's flashlight, covering it with her fingers to dim the glow. She started with the desk drawers. Most contained typical office supplies, stationery, pens, a leather-bound calendar filled with appointments. But the bottom drawer was locked. Rachel found a letter opener and, after several tense minutes, managed to jimmy the lock. Inside, she discovered a folder marked Foundation Records. She opened it and began to read. Her hands started shaking. Bank statements, wire transfers, invoices that did not match. Numbers that added up to millions of dollars flowing from the charitable foundation to accounts with unfamiliar names. Rachel did not understand all of it, but she understood enough. Miranda was stealing from a charity that was supposed to help sick children. She was siphoning millions of dollars and hiding it somewhere. Rachel photographed every page. Her phone's camera clicked softly in the darkness as she documented evidence of fraud on a massive scale. When she finished, she replaced the folder exactly as she had found it, locked the drawer, checked for any sign of disturbance. Then she crept back to her room, her phone burning with the evidence in her pocket. She had what she needed. Now she just had to figure out what to do with it. The next morning, Rachel took her evidence to the one person she believed could help. Carolyn Weston was Harrison's aunt, a formidable woman in her late 60s who had built her own fortune through decades of shrewd investments and strategic alliances. She had survived 3 divorces, 2 hostile takeovers, and countless attempts by lesser people to diminish her. She was exactly the kind of woman Rachel needed in her corner. They met in the garden at dawn, away from prying eyes and listening ears. The morning air was crisp with the promise of autumn, and dew still clung to the rose petals like scattered diamonds. Carolyn studied the photographs on Rachel's phone with growing horror. Her perfectly manicured fingers scrolled through image after image, her expression shifting from curiosity to disbelief to cold, calculating fury. "My God," Caroline whispered, "she has been stealing from the foundation. Millions of dollars, from dying children." Rachel nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and terror. "I found it last night. I do not understand all the financial details, but something is very wrong with these numbers." Carolyn zoomed in on one of the bank statements. "These are wire transfers to offshore accounts. Look at the routing numbers. Cayman Islands, Switzerland. It is textbook embezzlement, hidden behind layers of shell companies." She looked up at Rachel with new respect in her eyes. "How did you even know where to look?" Rachel hesitated. "Gloria helped me. She has been watching Miranda for years, documenting small inconsistencies. She gave me a key to the office." "Gloria Jenkins?" Caroline's eyebrows rose. "That woman has more courage than anyone gives her credit for. She has been waiting for someone brave enough to act on what she knew." Rachel swallowed hard. "I think she sees this as her chance to make things right." Carolyn was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of someone who had spent a lifetime navigating treacherous waters. "I have contacts at the FBI," she said. "The Financial Crimes Unit. They have suspected Miranda for over a year, but they could never get anyone inside the household willing to talk. This is the proof they need to move forward." Rachel's heart leaped with desperate hope. "So we can stop her? We can actually stop her?" "Yes, but we must be extremely careful." Carolyn gripped Rachel's arm with surprising strength. "If Miranda discovers what you found before we are ready to act, she will destroy the evidence. She will destroy you. She will destroy anyone who helped you. That woman has no limits when she feels threatened." "I understand. Do you?" Carolyn studied her face intently. "Because what I am about to propose is dangerous. It requires perfect timing and absolute secrecy. Tell me." Caroline outlined her plan. FBI agents would be positioned among the catering staff at the engagement party. A journalist from the New York Times, a trusted friend named Margaret Sullivan, who had won 2 Pulitzer Prizes for investigative reporting, would attend as a guest with hidden recording equipment. "But most importantly," Carolyn continued, "we need Miranda to confess publicly. Documents can be disputed. Lawyers can argue about interpretation. But a confession in front of 400 witnesses captured on video is undeniable." "How do we get her to confess?" Caroline's smile was thin and sharp. "We make her angry. We threaten everything she has built. We back her into a corner and watch her true nature emerge." Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. "That sounds dangerous." "It is." Caroline's expression softened slightly. "Which is why I need to know that you understand what you are risking. If this fails, you will be arrested. Derek has his felony charges ready. You could go to prison. Your daughter could be taken from you permanently." The words hit Rachel like physical blows. She thought about Lily, about her daughter's laugh, about the drawings that arrived every week, carefully folded and mailed from Ohio with little hearts drawn on the envelopes. She thought about the alternative: signing Derek's papers, giving up custody, watching her daughter grow up, believing her mother was a coward who surrendered to bullies. "I understand the risks," Rachel said quietly, "and I am willing to take them." Carolyn nodded slowly. "Then we proceed. 2 more days. Just stay invisible for 2 more days and this will all be over." They shook hands in the morning light, 2 women from vastly different worlds united by a common enemy. Rachel allowed herself to believe it. For the first time since Derek had appeared in that service hallway, She felt genuine hope, the kind that made breathing easier and the future seem possible. That night, she fell asleep thinking of Lily, of going home, of finally having the resources to build a real life for both of them. Everything was going to be okay. She should have known better. The morning arrived with violence. Rachel woke to the sound of her door crashing open. Megan Crawford stood in the doorway, flanked by two security guards, her face twisted with triumphant malice. "Get up," Megan commanded. "Miss Chase wants to see you." Now, Rachel's blood turned to ice. "What is this about?" "You will find out soon enough." Megan's smile was cruel. "Get dressed. You have 2 minutes." Rachel pulled on her uniform with trembling hands. Her mind raced through possibilities. Maybe Caroline had been discovered. Maybe someone had seen them in the garden. Maybe, but nothing could have prepared her for what waited in the main gallery. Miranda stood in the center of the room like a queen holding court. She wore a silk robe over designer pajamas, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Her face was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that came before hurricanes. Beside her stood Derek, his arms crossed, wearing the satisfied expression of a predator who had finally cornered its prey. Karen Mills lurked in the corner, tablet in hand, documenting everything, and Caroline Weston was nowhere to be seen. "Good morning, Rachel." Miranda's voice dripped with false sweetness, each word carefully chosen to maximize pain. "Did you sleep well?" "I hope so, because it will be the last peaceful sleep you have for a very long time." Rachel forced herself to breathe. "What is this about?" Miranda laughed, a musical sound that contained no warmth whatsoever. "Oh, Rachel, did you really think I would not find out?" She began to pace slowly, her silk robe flowing behind her like a cape. "Did you really believe you could sneak into my private office, photograph my personal documents, and I would not notice?" Rachel's heart stopped. "I have cameras everywhere," Miranda continued. "Hidden cameras, in every room that matters. I watched you break into my desk last night. I watched you photograph page after page of documents you had no right to see." She stopped pacing and turned to face Rachel directly. Her eyes were cold as winter ice. "I know everything, Rachel, and now you are going to pay for it." The security guards moved closer, blocking any possibility of escape. But that is not even the best part. Miranda's smile widened. "Karen, show her." Karen stepped forward with her tablet. On the screen was an email. "From Caroline Weston to Harrison Weston III, sent this morning at 4:17 a.m. "Dearest Harrison," Karen read aloud, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "I am so sorry to leave without saying goodbye, but I received word of a family emergency in London. My sister has fallen ill, and I must go to her immediately. I do not know when I will return. Please give my regards to Miranda. I am sure the engagement party will be wonderful." Rachel shook her head desperately. "That is not real." Caroline would never what?" Miranda interrupted. "Never abandon you? Never leave you to face the consequences alone?" She leaned closer, her expensive perfume overwhelming Rachel's senses. "Caroline Weston left this estate 3 hours ago. She drove away in the middle of the night without telling anyone. Her phone is disconnected. Her assistant says she has no idea when she will return." "That email is fake," Rachel insisted. "Someone hacked her account. Caroline would not. Caroline is gone." Miranda's voice was final. "Your evidence is gone. I had Karen collect your phone from your room this morning, along with all those incriminating photographs you were so proud of." Rachel's legs threatened to give out beneath her. Gone. Everything was gone. The photographs, the bank statements, the proof of everything Miranda had done, all of it erased as if it had never existed. "But we are not finished yet," Miranda said. She was clearly enjoying this, savoring each moment of Rachel's destruction like a fine wine. "Derek?" Derek stepped forward, papers in hand. His smile was the same one he had worn when he told her he wanted a divorce. The same one he had worn when he lied to the court about his assets. The same cold, cruel curve of lips that haunted her nightmares. "Here is how this works," he said casually. "You sign these documents. Full custody to me, zero child support, zero contact with Lily, and in exchange, we do not press criminal charges for breaking and entering." Rachel's voice emerged as a whisper. No. No? Derek laughed, genuinely amused. Rachel, look around you. You have no options left. No evidence, no allies, no way out. He held up the papers. Sign these, and you walk away with your freedom. Refuse, and I will make sure you go to prison. And once you are a convicted felon, no court in the country will let you anywhere near our daughter. She will never forgive you, Rachel said, her voice shaking. When Lily grows up and learns what you did, she will grow up believing whatever I tell her. Derek's eyes were empty of anything resembling humanity. Children are impressionable. Give me a year, and she will not even remember your name. Rachel wanted to scream. She wanted to claw his eyes out, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain he was causing her. But she had learned through years of brutal experience that Derek always had backup plans, that losing her temper would only give him more ammunition. So she stood frozen while Miranda delivered the next blow. Oh, but we are still not finished, Miranda said with theatrical delight. Karen? Karen tapped her phone screen. The sound of ringing filled the room. Then a familiar voice answered. Older, frightened, confused by the early morning call. Hello? Rachel's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. It was her mother, Ted. Morrison? Karen said smoothly, her voice dripping with false concern. This is Karen Mills calling from the Weston Estate in New York. I am afraid I have some very disturbing news about your daughter, Rachel. What? What has happened? Is she okay? Rachel tried to speak, tried to shout, but one of the security guards clamped a hand over her mouth. Your daughter has been arrested for breaking and entering, Karen continued. She broke into her employer's private office and stole confidential documents. She is facing felony charges. The police are being contacted as we speak. Oh my God. Her mother's voice cracked with terror. Oh my God, no, this cannot be happening. I have to tell Lily. I have to explain. I am so sorry you had to find out this way, Karen said. We thought you should know before you see it on the news. The call ended. Rachel collapsed. Her knees hit the marble floor with bruising force. Tears streamed down her face. Her entire body shook with sobs she could not control. Lily knew now. Her 7-year-old daughter had just been told that Mommy was a criminal. Miranda crouched down to Rachel's level, her face inches away. That is what happens when you cross me, she whispered. I do not just destroy my enemies. I destroy everything they love. She stood and smoothed her silk robe. You have 1 hour to sign the papers and leave this property. If you are still here after that, I will have you arrested for trespassing in addition to everything else. She walked away without looking back. Derek lingered for a moment, savoring his victory. You know, Rachel, he said thoughtfully, I almost feel bad for you. Almost. Then he followed Miranda out of the gallery. The security guards released Rachel and stepped back. She lay on the cold marble floor, surrounded by million-dollar artwork and the wreckage of everything she had fought for. She had lost. Completely. Absolutely. Utterly. And the worst part was knowing that somewhere in Ohio, her daughter was crying herself to sleep, believing her mother was a criminal. Rachel sat alone in her empty room, the walls pressed in around her. The single window let in gray afternoon light that felt more like a judgment than illumination. Her suitcase lay open on the bed, still half packed from when she had started this job with so much desperate hope. 1 hour, that was how long she had before security came to escort her off the property. 1 hour to watch everything she had built crumble into nothing. Her phone was gone. Her evidence was gone. Her ally had vanished into the night like a ghost. And Lily knew. Her 7-year-old daughter now believed her mother was a criminal, was probably crying right now, confused and scared, wondering why Mommy had done something so terrible. Rachel stared at the wall. The thoughts came slowly at first. Quiet whispers that grew louder with each passing minute. You failed. You lost everything. Lily would be better off without you. She looked at the window, really looked at it. How high up was she? High enough? The thoughts were seductive in their simplicity. One decision, one moment, and all the pain would stop. No more fighting, no more losing, no more watching everything she loved slip through her fingers. Rachel stood and walked to the window. Her reflection stared back at her, hollow-eyed and defeated. A woman who had tried so hard and failed so completely. She pressed her palm against the cold glass, and then her phone rang. Not the work phone that Karen had confiscated. Her personal phone. The cheap prepaid device she kept hidden in a tear in her suitcase lining. For emergencies that she had prayed would never come. Rachel dug it out with numb fingers. Unknown number. She almost did not answer. What was the point? What could anyone possibly say that would change anything? But something made her press the green button. Do not give up yet. Gloria's voice. Urgent, alive, real. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. Gloria, where are you? I thought, listen to me carefully, honey, we do not have much time. Gloria's voice was low, as if she was afraid of being overheard. I kept copies, paper copies of everything you photographed. I hid them where Miranda will never find them. Rachel's heart stuttered back to life. What? How? I made copies before you even left her office last night. I knew there was a chance Miranda would discover what you found, so I made backups. Paper copies, hidden in the old groundskeeper's shed behind the rose garden, inside a rusted toolbox that no one has opened in 15 years. Tears streamed down Rachel's face. But even if we have the documents, Caroline is gone. The plan, Caroline is not in London. Gloria's voice was fierce. That email was fake. Miranda's people hacked into her account and sent it to make you think she abandoned you. But Caroline is safe. She is hiding at her friend Margaret's house in Southampton, waiting for our signal. Rachel's legs gave out. She sank onto the bed, clutching the phone like a lifeline. Why? Rachel's voice broke. Why are you doing this? After everything that happened today? After I lied about my background? Because I saw who you really are. Gloria's voice softened. I saw you sit with Dorothy when she was crying, even though you had nothing to gain. I saw you share your food with a stranger when you barely had enough for yourself. I saw you stand up to a woman who terrifies everyone in this household. Gloria paused, and when she continued, her voice was thick with emotion. 25 years ago, a woman like Miranda destroyed my marriage. She wanted my husband, and when he refused her, she spread lies about him, destroyed his reputation, cost him his job. He started drinking to cope with the shame. Within 2 years, he was dead. Oh, Gloria, Rachel whispered. I did nothing. Gloria's voice cracked. I was afraid. I told myself that staying quiet was the safe choice, that fighting back would only make things worse. And I have regretted it every single day since. She took a shaky breath. This is my chance, Rachel. My chance to finally do what I should have done all those years ago. My chance to stand up instead of staying silent. But if Miranda finds out you helped me, then she finds out. Gloria's voice was steady now. I am 63 years old. I have spent 22 years serving people who do not deserve my loyalty. If I lose my job, I lose my job. At least I will finally be able to look at myself in the mirror. Rachel wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What do I need to do? Stay hidden until tonight. Gloria's tone became businesslike. After midnight, meet me at the groundskeeper's shed. We will get the documents to Caroline. The FBI agents are still in position for tomorrow's party. Margaret Sullivan still has her recording equipment. The plan can still work. And if it does not, then at least we tried. At least we fought. Gloria's voice dropped to a whisper. That is all any of us can do, honey. Try. Fight. Refuse to let them win without a battle. The call ended. Rachel sat on the bed for a long moment, the phone clutched in her hands. She thought about what Gloria had said, about her husband, about 25 years of regret, about the courage it took to finally stand up after a lifetime of staying silent. She thought about Lily, about what she wanted her daughter to learn from watching her mother's choices. That giving up was acceptable when things got hard. That bullies should be allowed to win because fighting back was scary. That women should accept whatever scraps powerful people decided to throw them. No, Rachel stood up slowly. Her legs were shaky. Her hands trembled. Her heart still ached with the weight of everything that had happened. But somewhere deep inside her, a spark had caught fire. She was not going to give up. Not yet. Not while she still had breath in her lungs and people willing to fight beside her. Not while her daughter was still watching, still learning, still forming her understanding of what it meant to be a woman in a world that so often tried to silence women. Rachel Morrison had lost everything, but she was not finished yet. The groundskeeper's shed smelled of rust and old soil and forgotten things. Rachel crouched in the darkness, wrapped in a dusty blanket she had found draped over an ancient wheelbarrow. Through gaps in the wooden slats, she could see the lights of the main house glittering in the distance like a constellation of cold stars. She had been hiding here for 6 hours. 6 hours of jumping at every sound. 6 hours of imagining Miranda's security guards crashing through the door. 6 hours of second-guessing every decision that had led her to this moment. At precisely 2:15 in the morning, a soft knock came at the door. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. The signal they had agreed upon. Rachel opened the door to find Gloria standing in the moonlight, her gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, her face set with determination. "Did anyone follow you?" Rachel whispered. "No. Everyone is asleep." Miranda took a sleeping pill after the engagement party preparations exhausted her. Gloria slipped inside and closed the door behind her. "We have maybe 4 hours before the household wakes up." They worked quickly by the light of a single candle. Gloria retrieved the rusted toolbox from beneath a pile of moldy tarps. Inside, wrapped in plastic bags to protect them from moisture, were the paper copies she had made. Bank statements, wire transfers, emails printed from Miranda's personal account, receipts that did not match the Foundation's official records, a paper trail of corruption that stretched back nearly 3 years, and one document that made Rachel's blood run cold. "Gloria, what is this?" Gloria looked at the paper in Rachel's hand. Her expression darkened. "I found that in her personal safe," she said quietly. The combination was her birthday. She was never very creative. Rachel stared at the document. It was a birth certificate. Brenda Mae Thompson, born March 15th, 1993. Birthplace, Wheeling, West Virginia. Miranda's real name, Gloria confirmed. Everything about her background is a lie. The wealthy family in Connecticut, the degree from Yale, the charitable work in Europe before she met Harrison. None of it is real. She reinvented herself completely, Rachel whispered. From scratch. Gloria's voice was grim. I do not know how she did it. Fake documents, maybe? Or she found someone who could create a new identity for her. But the woman Harrison fell in love with does not exist. She never existed. Rachel carefully added the birth certificate to the pile of evidence. This changes everything, she said. This is not just about embezzlement anymore. This is fraud on a massive scale, which is why we need to get these documents to Caroline immediately. Gloria checked her watch. Margaret Sullivan is expecting us at her house in Southampton by 4 a.m. We need to move. They crept through the estate grounds like shadows, avoiding the paths covered by security cameras, slipping through gaps in hedges that Gloria had mapped over 22 years of service. At the back gate, a car waited with its lights off. The driver's window rolled down, revealing Caroline Weston's sharp features. Get in, Caroline commanded. We have a lot of work to do before tomorrow night. The drive to Southampton took 40 minutes. They spent every second of it reviewing the evidence, planning their approach, preparing for everything that could go wrong. Margaret Sullivan's house was a modest cottage by Hampton standards, which meant it was only worth about $2 million instead of 20. The journalist herself was waiting at the door, a small woman in her 50s with keen eyes and a recorder already in her hand. Show me everything, Margaret said. They spread the documents across her dining room table. Margaret examined each one with the focused intensity of someone who had spent 30 years uncovering corruption. This is explosive, she said finally. Wire fraud, money laundering, identity fraud. If we can prove all of this, Miranda Chase, or whatever her real name is, will spend the next decade in federal prison. We need her to confess, Caroline said. Documents can be disputed. We need her own words. Margaret nodded slowly. Then we need to make her angry enough to forget herself. Angry enough to say things she would never say if she was thinking clearly. I can do that, Rachel said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She hates me, Rachel continued. She hates everything I represent. The fact that I stood up to her, the fact that I saw through her mask. If I confront her publicly, at her own engagement party, in front of everyone she is trying to impress, she will lose control. Carolyn frowned. That is incredibly dangerous. If she does not confess, if she keeps her composure, she will not keep her composure. Rachel's voice was certain. I know women like Miranda. I was married to someone like her for 7 years. They cannot stand being challenged. They cannot tolerate anyone questioning their carefully constructed image. She met Caroline's eyes. Trust me, I know how to push her buttons. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Margaret Sullivan smiled. I think I'm going to like this story, she said. They spent the rest of the night planning every detail. FBI agents would be positioned among the catering staff, ready to move the moment Miranda incriminated herself. Margaret would attend the party as a guest, with a hidden camera disguised as a brooch. Caroline would ensure that security personnel were occupied elsewhere when Rachel made her move. And Dorothy Hayes, the florist who Miranda had humiliated and nearly destroyed, had agreed to provide testimony about financial discrepancies she had noticed in the foundation's flower budgets. By dawn, they had a plan. By noon, they were in position. By 7 p.m., 400 guests would begin arriving at the Weston Hamptons estate for the engagement party of the season. And by midnight, one way or another, everything would be decided. The ballroom of the Weston Hamptons estate had been transformed into a vision from a fairy tale. 10,000 white roses cascaded from crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's houses. A 40-piece orchestra played classical music on a stage draped in silk. Champagne towers sparkled like liquid gold under lights designed to make everyone look beautiful. 400 of New York's most influential people mingled among ice sculptures and caviar stations, their designer gowns and tailored tuxedos representing a collective net worth of several $billions. At the center of it all stood Miranda Chase. She was radiant in a custom white gown that had taken 3 Italian seamstresses 6 months to create. Diamonds glittered at her throat and wrists. Her smile was perfect, gracious, warm. She was, by all appearances, the happiest woman in the world. Harrison stood beside her, playing his role as the devoted fiancé. He smiled for photographers. He shook hands with business partners. He said all the right things at all the right moments. But if anyone had looked closely, they might have noticed that his smile never quite reached his eyes. Derek Morrison circulated through the crowd, working the room with the smooth confidence of a man who believed he had already won. He had spent the afternoon finalizing paperwork with his lawyers. By tomorrow, Rachel would sign away custody of Lily, and he would never have to worry about his ex-wife again. Everything was going exactly according to plan, and then the music stopped. It happened without warning. One moment the orchestra was playing a waltz. The next, silence fell across the ballroom like a held breath. Every head turned toward the source of the interruption. A woman in a maid's uniform stood at the microphone on the orchestra's stage. She was not supposed to be there. She had been fired, escorted off the property, banned from ever returning, and yet here she was, Rachel Morrison. For a moment, no one moved. The guests stared in confusion. The staff exchanged bewildered glances. Security guards began pushing through the crowd, but they moved slowly, uncertain whose orders to follow. Miranda's smile froze on her face. What is she doing here? Miranda hissed to Karen. Get her out, now. But before security could reach the stage, Rachel leaned into the microphone. Her voice was calm, steady, clear. It carried across the silent ballroom like a bell tolling midnight. I have evidence that Miranda Chase has stolen $4.2 million from dying children. The room exploded. Gasps, whispers, the rustle of expensive fabric as 400 people turned to stare at Miranda. Security, Miranda shrieked. Get her off that stage. But the security guards had stopped moving. They exchanged confused looks, glancing toward the service entrances where men in catering uniforms had quietly revealed FBI badges. Rachel continued speaking, her voice carrying over the chaos. The Weston Foundation for Children's Health has received over $12 million in donations over the past 3 years. That money was supposed to fund cancer treatments for children whose families could not afford care. She paused, letting the words sink in. Instead, $4.2 million was diverted to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands in Switzerland. Wire transfers hidden behind shell companies. Invoices for services that were never provided. A systematic theft from the most vulnerable people imaginable. That is a lie. Miranda's composure cracked. Her voice came out high and strained. She is a disgruntled former employee. She broke into my office. She is facing criminal charges. Rachel nodded calmly. I did enter your office, and I did photograph documents, but I did not understand what I was looking at. She held up a folder of papers. Your bookkeeper helped me understand. Miranda's face went white. And your florist. Rachel gestured toward the crowd, where Dorothy Hayes stood watching with quiet satisfaction. And your former accountant, and 3 other employees who were too afraid to speak up until now. She paused. And the FBI, who have been investigating you for over a year. The guests erupted in shocked murmurs. Photographers who had been hired to capture the happy couple began snapping pictures of Miranda's crumbling composure instead. Harrison stepped forward, his face pale. Miranda? What is she talking about? Miranda grabbed his arm. Darling, this is insane. She is making all of this up because I fired her. You know me. You know I would never— I know the woman you pretended to be, Rachel interrupted. Her voice cut through Miranda's protest like a knife. But I also know your real name. The room went silent again. Rachel looked directly at Miranda. Brenda Mae Thompson, born in Wheeling, West Virginia, grew up in a trailer park on the wrong side of the tracks. No wealthy Connecticut family, no Yale degree, no European charity work. She held up the birth certificate. Everything about you is a lie. Miranda's mask shattered completely, her face twisted with rage and hatred and something that looked almost like fear. The polished society woman disappeared, replaced by something feral and desperate. You have nothing, Miranda screamed. Nothing. I built this life from nothing. I clawed my way out of that hellhole. I made myself into someone who matters. These people, she gestured wildly at the horrified guests. They were born into everything. They never had to fight for anything. They never had to choose between eating and paying rent. They never had to smile at men they despised just to survive another month. Her voice cracked. I deserve this life. I earned it. And I am not going to let some pathetic little maid take it away from me. The confession hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. 400 witnesses, 20 cameras, 3 FBI agents moving toward the stage, and 1 journalist with a hidden recorder capturing every word. Miranda seemed to realize what she had done. Her face went pale. She looked around at the horrified expressions, at the guests backing away from her, at the FBI agents closing in. Harrison, she said desperately. Harrison, please. I did it for us. Everything I did was for us. Harrison stared at her as if seeing a stranger. I do not even know who you are, he said quietly. Derek Morrison had been edging toward the exit since Rachel first approached the microphone. He was almost at the door when 2 FBI agents stepped into his path. Derek Morrison, one of them said, we have questions about your involvement in witness intimidation, fraud, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Derek's face went gray. I want a lawyer. The agent smiled thinly. You will need several. They led him away as the guests parted to let them through. Miranda made one last desperate move. She lunged at Rachel, her diamond-studded fingers extended like claws, a scream of pure rage tearing from her throat. Rachel did not catch her hand this time. She simply stepped aside. Miranda's momentum carried her forward. She crashed into the champagne tower with spectacular force. Crystal glasses shattered around her. Thousands of dollars worth of champagne cascaded over her custom white gown. She hit the marble floor hard, surrounded by broken glass and ruined dreams. The photographers captured every moment. Those images would be on every tabloid, every news website, every social media platform by morning. Security guards finally reached the stage, but instead of removing Rachel, they helped Miranda to her feet and handed her over to the waiting FBI agents. Miranda Chase, one of them said formally, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and identity fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Miranda was still screaming as they led her away. Incoherent threats and accusations and promises of revenge that no one was listening to anymore. The ballroom fell silent. Rachel stood alone on the stage, the folder of evidence still in her hands. Harrison Weston approached slowly. His face was pale. His eyes were red. He looked like a man who had just watched his entire world collapse. I am so sorry, he said. His voice was hoarse. I did not see what she was. I did not want to see. Rachel looked at him for a long moment. You saw what you wanted to see, she said quietly. We all do sometimes, but now you know the truth. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. She stepped down from the stage. The crowd parted for her as she walked toward the exit. Some people stared, some whispered, a few even began to applaud. But Rachel did not notice any of them. She was thinking about Lily, about the phone call she was going to make as soon as she was alone, about telling her daughter that mommy was not a criminal after all, about explaining that sometimes doing the right thing was terrifying and painful and lonely, but it was still worth doing, about finally going home. At the door, Gloria Jenkins was waiting. The older woman was crying, tears of joy and relief and something that looked like 25 years of weight finally lifting from her shoulders. "You did it?" Gloria whispered. "You actually did it." Rachel took her hand. "We did it," she said, "together." They walked out into the night. Behind them, the engagement party of the season had transformed into a crime scene. And Rachel Morrison, former maid, former victim, former invisible woman, walked into her future with her head held high. 1 year later, Rachel Morrison stood at the window of her corner office on the 32nd floor of a Manhattan high-rise, watching the sun set over the city that had once seemed determined to destroy her. The nameplate on her door read Morrison Events and Consulting. Below that, in smaller letters, specializing in charitable foundation management and corporate accountability. It had been 12 months since the night of the engagement party. 12 months of trials and testimonies and tabloid headlines. 12 months of rebuilding everything that had been torn down. 12 months of learning what it meant to truly start over. Miranda Chase, whose real name the world now knew was Brenda Thompson, had been convicted on 17 counts of wire fraud, money laundering, and identity fraud. The judge had sentenced her to 12 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 8. The prosecutors had pushed for the maximum sentence after evidence revealed that Miranda's theft had directly resulted in 3 children being denied cancer treatments they desperately needed. 2 of those children had died. Miranda had shown no remorse at her sentencing. She had screamed at the judge, threatened the prosecutors, and had to be physically restrained when the verdict was read. Her cellmate, according to sources within the prison system, was a former social media influencer convicted of running a pyramid scheme. They reportedly despised each other. Derek Morrison's fall had been equally spectacular, though less dramatic. The FBI investigation had uncovered not only his involvement in witness intimidation and conspiracy with Miranda, but also years of financial fraud in his own business dealings. The hidden assets Rachel had always suspected existed were finally revealed. Offshore accounts in 6 countries, shell companies on 3 continents, over $4 million that should have been divided during their divorce. He had been convicted on 11 counts and sentenced to 7 years. But the financial consequences were even more devastating than the prison time. Courts had ordered Derek to pay Rachel restitution of $340,000 in hidden assets, plus 5 years of back child support with interest. His company had collapsed after Harrison Weston pulled his investment. His remaining assets had been seized to pay legal fees and court-ordered penalties. His second wife, Tiffany, who was also Rachel's cousin, had filed for divorce the moment she realized Derek was broke. She had moved back to Ohio and was reportedly working as a receptionist at a dental office. Last Rachel heard, Derek was working at a car dealership in New Jersey, living in a studio apartment, and counting down the days until he had to report to federal prison. She did not feel sorry for him. Some of the other players in the drama had fared better. Gloria Jenkins had been promoted to estate manager at the Weston household with a 60% raise and full benefits. She had used her first bonus to take a trip to Paris, something she had dreamed about for 40 years. She had sent Rachel a postcard from the Eiffel Tower. The message read, "Thank you for giving me my courage back." Dorothy Hayes had received an exclusive contract to provide flowers for all Weston family events. Her small business had tripled in size. She had hired 4 new employees and was considering opening a second location. Carolyn Weston had established a scholarship fund in Rachel's name, providing financial assistance to single mothers pursuing education and career advancement. Margaret Sullivan had won her 3rd Pulitzer Prize for her coverage of the Miranda Chase scandal. Her book about the case was scheduled for publication next spring. Even Karen Mills had found redemption of a sort. She had testified against Miranda in exchange for immunity, providing crucial evidence about the extent of the fraud. She had moved to a small town in Vermont and was reportedly working at an animal shelter. Harrison Weston had donated the entire $12 million that should have gone to the Children's Foundation, plus an additional $5 million from his personal fortune, to establish a new charitable organization with strict oversight and transparency requirements. He had also sent Rachel a handwritten letter apologizing for his blindness and thanking her for her courage. She had accepted the apology. She had not accepted his invitation to dinner. She was not interested in being rescued by a billionaire. She had rescued herself. But none of these things were what Rachel thought about most when she looked out her office window at the Manhattan skyline. What she thought about was Lily. The door to her office opened, and her daughter burst through like a small tornado of energy and joy. "Mommy!" Lily threw herself into Rachel's arms. "I finished all my homework, and Grandma said I could have ice cream, and I made a new friend at school named Sophia, and she has a dog named Pancake." Rachel laughed and held her daughter tight. Lily was 8 now. She had grown 3 inches in the past year. She had lost 2 teeth and gained a passion for dinosaurs, and declared that she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. She lived with Rachel full-time now. The custody arrangement had been finalized 6 months ago, after Derek's conviction made his parental rights essentially meaningless. Every morning, Rachel woke up to the sound of her daughter's laughter. Every night, she tucked Lily into bed and read her stories about brave girls who had adventures and saved the day. It was everything she had fought for, everything she had nearly lost, everything that made every terrible moment worth enduring. Behind Lily, Rachel's mother appeared in the doorway. She was smiling, but there were tears in her eyes. There often were these days, tears of gratitude and pride and relief that her daughter had survived the storm and emerged stronger on the other side. "Ready for dinner?" her mother asked. "Almost." Rachel set Lily down. "I just need to finish one thing." She walked to her desk and picked up a letter that had arrived that morning. It was from a women's shelter in Ohio, the same shelter Rachel had been quietly donating to since her business had become profitable. Inside was a handwritten note. "Dear Ms. Morrison, I was ready to give up. My husband had taken everything from me, my money, my confidence, my belief that I deserved anything better than what he decided to give me. I had spent so many years being told I was worthless that I started to believe it. I was going to sign the papers he wanted me to sign, give up custody of my children, disappear like he told me to, because fighting seemed impossible, and I was so tired of being afraid. Then someone at the shelter showed me your story. They told me about a woman who was working as a maid, who had lost everything, who faced enemies with more money and power than she could ever hope to match, enemies who had planned her complete destruction. And she won, not because a rich man saved her, not because she got lucky, but because she refused to give up, because she found people willing to stand with her, because she bet on herself when everyone else had bet against her. I filed for divorce yesterday. I am terrified. I do not know what is going to happen. My husband has threatened to destroy me the same way your husband threatened to destroy you. But for the first time in years, I believe it is possible to have a future. Thank you for showing me that fighting back is not just something that happens in movies. Thank you for showing me that women like us can win. With more gratitude than I can express, Sarah Rachel read the letter 3 times. Then she walked to the wall of her office and pinned it next to the others. There were 17 letters now, 17 women who had reached out to tell her that her story had given them courage. 17 women who had decided to fight instead of surrender. 17 lives changed because one woman had refused to stay silent. "Mommy?" Lily appeared at her elbow, looking up at the wall of letters with curious eyes. "What are those?" Rachel knelt down to her daughter's level. "Those are letters from very brave women," she said. "Women who are going through hard times. Women who needed to know that fighting back is possible." Lily nodded seriously. "Like you fought back?" "Yes, baby. Like I fought back." Lily was quiet for a moment, her 8-year-old mind processing something important. "Mommy," she said finally, "will I have to fight back someday?" Rachel's heart ached at the question, at the truth she could not protect her daughter from. "Maybe," she said honestly. "Sometimes life is hard. Sometimes people try to hurt us or take things from us. Sometimes it feels like we cannot win." She tucked a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "But here is what I want you to remember. You are stronger than you know. You are braver than you feel. And you never, ever have to fight alone." Lily threw her arms around Rachel's neck. "I love you, Mommy. I love you too, baby. More than anything in the world." They held each other for a long moment. Then Rachel stood, took her daughter's hand, and walked toward the door where her mother was waiting. At the threshold, she paused and looked back at her office. At the desk, where she built her new business. At the wall covered with letters from women she had never met but had somehow helped. At the view of a city that had once seemed determined to crush her. She had been a wife who had everything taken from her. She had been a maid who was supposed to stay invisible. She had been a mother who was told she would never see her daughter again. And now she was something else entirely. A survivor, a fighter, a woman who had bet on herself and won. Rachel turned off the light and closed the door. Outside, the sun had set over Manhattan. The city glittered with a million lights, each one representing a story, a struggle, a person trying to find their way. Somewhere out there, a woman named Sarah was filing divorce papers. Somewhere out there, another woman was reading Rachel's story and finding her courage. Somewhere out there, the next battle was beginning for someone who felt alone and afraid and certain that fighting back was impossible. Rachel could not save all of them. She could not fight every battle or right every wrong. But she could share her story. She could show them what was possible. She could be the proof that ordinary women could defeat extraordinary odds. And that, she had learned, was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. For every woman who was told to stay quiet, for every mother who was told she was not enough, for every person who was told they did not matter. Your voice is your weapon. Your courage is your shield. Your story is your power. Use them.